I almost dismissed this anime as just another game anime. I almost never touched it because, after all my experience with poorly written and poorly handled game world elements, I was tired of the trope more often being a crutch or excuse for power fantasy characters and bullshit developments. I almost made a mistake. If I had to describe Shangri-La Frontier in as succinct and accurate a manner as I could, I'd tell you that this series is Let Me Solo Her the anime. Cut, you can't use that joke, it's already been used by everyone else in the community. I don't give a fuck, I'm still gonna use it. It's accurate. Shangri-La Frontier was something that became an unexpected hit with me for its fun and relatable gamerisms and the characters the story featured. But more than that, it was one that managed to capitalize on one of the tropes in anime that I really just cannot stand, the game world. But before that, a quick summary of the series. Rakuro Hizutome is not your average gamer. He's an elite legend among the gaming world, known for conquering the most poorly constructed and buggy games the world has to offer. As the king of trash, he's conquered even some of the worst games imaginable. He'd still probably struggle playing Redfall though. But this show is not about the garbage games. It's about the king of all games from which this series derives its titles, Shangri-La Frontier. The local game store manager convinces Rakuro to try it out since she's secretly in league with a girl who's been crushing on the overenthusiastic gamer and is helping her link up with him. Now, the temptation of a challenge to conquer seduces Rakuro into giving it a try, and he finds it somewhat satisfying to play up until his fateful encounter with a nigh unbeatable legendary monster called Lycagon the Night Slayer. Talk about a f***ing name. And, after getting absolutely rocked by this giant wolf, he becomes even more determined to defeat the game's 7 unique enemies known as Colossi. And from there, you'll watch a half-naked Birdman fumble around in the dark, just trying not to attract too much attention from other players while slaying bosses because, well, he ends up famous for a lot of different reasons. With that out of the way, this show is very well conceived when it comes to its setting. It has 2 layers to the world that make it a very interesting show. The first layer is the show's real world that corresponds to our own. Basically, it's the normal everyday world except idealized because there are Sword Art Online full dive headsets easily available. Check out this video, this tech actually does exist. And AAA devs who actually care about making good games. This real world is nice and all, but it's merely supplemental to the actual focus of the anime, the in-game world of SLF. And now, yes, there are anime that I can point to that I love the way that they implemented this game world. So I'm a Spider So What probably has the best game world mechanic tie-in for everything I've seen and read. However, Shangri-La Frontier is at a close second, a very close second. And please, no SAO comments, I don't watch that trash. Just kidding. Firstly, Shangri-La Frontier approaches the game world as, well, an actual game. Not only that it doesn't have any life-altering effects on the players, but it also feels like a properly built game within this world. In similar stories like Bofuri, the game was just a means to explain a bland power fantasy about Maple exploiting oversights on behalf of the devs to become overpowered and being a general pest to their whole glitch fixing team. Shangri-La Frontier does way more than that. Not only is the world properly layered with its own story and history, but it seems to have proper mechanics and balancing that make it run like a well-oiled machine. And, well, a fun game to play. Thus, rather than relying on bugs or exploits, Sunraku's rampage in this game is solely based on his own skills and tactical use of in-game mechanics. Basically, it's far less luck and blunder and far more skill and tactics, and that's the kind of combat I really like. Now, all this adds up to a fun experience where Sunraku and his gaming allies go head-to-head with some of the game's most brutal mechanics and have to experience the social order of in-game life of an MMORPG player. It provides a really fun pseudo-gaming experience full of banter, comedic behavior, and epic action. The kind of trolling you would generally get up to while gaming with your friends. Intermingled with the parts of the series that take place in the real world, it is a good story about a guy enjoying his favorite pastime and unwittingly creating havoc within that world. However, for all the good I've just discussed, there's one major weakness to the way SLF handles the game world that I feel it fails to overcome in a good number of instances. The lack of real stakes. Unlike a show such as a game world isekai or SAO, the player's life isn't intrinsically tied to their avatar. What that means is there's no major stakes in a massive struggle other than the risk of defeat. Now, In the case of Weathermon the Tomb Guard, they overcome this by time-gating the boss battle and limiting resources so that only a single attempt at the fight is possible. So it does add some level of urgency to their fight. However, other cases lack any sort of compelling element that would make you feel the tension of such a heated battle, since Sunraku can just respawn and try again. His life is never really at stake, no one's ever really is, so it feels like it lacks in that regard. Another major weakness is that the story of the anime isn't what you'd expect. It's a story about a player having some fun. So if you expect him to get all into the lore and dive deep into what the game world has to offer, you'll be sorely disappointed as he skips just about every dialogue option that would explain this stuff to you. You'll find the protagonist ignoring the plot to his whole story because he'd rather just throw hands than understand the world around him. It also lacks a certain moral underpinning that makes a lot of series feel like they're about something bigger than what's presented on the surface. And the lack of proper backstory, as it doesn't actually need it because it's about a video game, means you don't get that deep-rooted connection of relatability and empathy to the characters. But that's about where most of my complaints end, because none of that is why you should have watched this anime to begin with. If you want meaning, go to Freerun. If you want masterful plot lines, go to the Apothecary Diaries. What Shangri-La Frontier offers you is a good time through action, banter, and comedy. Now, in spite of not getting emotionally invested in the characters like you usually would in another story, they're still a really great group and all have their sort of charm for the way that they're used in the story. You can still like them. The big three you'll see most are Sanraku, Oikatsu, and Pencilgun. 3 elite level gamers, each with their own background and reason for playing. While Sanraku just likes challenges, Oikatsu is an esports player, and Pencilgun bullies people to let off steam after work. Initially, Pencilgun was the sworn enemy of Oikatsu and Sanraku, but the unique opportunity to slay Weathermon causes them to form an alliance, and, well, it becomes a trio of 2 clowns and a tyrant real fast. But let's be real, if you gamed with friends and didn't get verbally abused by them, then you never actually gamed. It's this lively kind of gamer banter that keeps the whole thing rolling between battle sequences against area bosses and unkillable undead robot samurai. It's actually a cool kind of twist in the story. Pencilgun holds a grudge against Sanraku and Oikatsu for their tampering with her plans to dominate a different game world, but still respects their skills and ability to overcome. However, she becomes invested in a particular NPC, and that leads her to recruiting the only 2 gamers to earn her respect to help take on a boss fight like no other. One which not even the most powerful clans in the game could think of beating.
Whatever game you're playing, it won't work. You can't defeat me.
No, I know. But he can.
And while this is supposed to be a pretty epic battle, it has the issue of dragging itself out for a little too long in my opinion, as if it's trying to milk the whole event for as much content as possible, and the mechanics around defeating the boss made it a bit underwhelming, as most of the time was just spent staying alive and not actually being able to fight back, i.e. Sanraku did a lot of parrying and dodging, but not a whole lot of fighting. If one of those 2 issues had been fixed, I probably wouldn't have felt like it hit a lull in the middle of the fight. But other battle sequences are pretty well done and have a really good flow of motion and lots of energy to them. It's nice to watch the creative ways in which Sanraku deals with the challenges and difficulties. His quippy personality steals the whole show in my eyes, because without his constant commentary on things, the show would only be half as entertaining. The primary fun in all of this was the way the 3 main characters interact with each other like a gaggle of idiots, constantly bouncing comedy acts off each other in a way that reminds me of the good old days of bullying my friend for spending all our feints fighting a Black Diablos. And to round out this review, there are some other smaller things to comment on. It's nice to see that Sanraku isn't just escaping to games because of some depressing family dynamic. In fact, his family is fully intact and functional. It keeps this from feeling too dour and dreary and allows you to fully enjoy the game experience. It's actually kind of wholesome that the whole family has their own individual hobbies they enjoy, but still take time out of their week in order to have some family time over a meal without being at each other's throats. The dad enjoys fishing, the sister enjoys fashion, the mother enjoys collecting insects, and obviously, Rakuro likes his video games. Another small element I liked was the addition of other game worlds to tie into the legend of Rakuro Hisatome. You actually get to see him play other games and show off just how broken they really are compared to SLF. It's a nice change of pace that allows you to see the whole gaming scene of this fictional world, and it makes it really kind of come alive. And of course, I'd be remiss not to mention the maiden in love herself, Rei Saiga. She's actually one of the game's most accomplished players, that is, SLF's most accomplished players. One who longs to casually game with her crush Rakuro but is too awkward to approach him directly. It creates an awkward yet funny dynamic between them where her character is seen as a separate entity since Rakuro doesn't know who she is and hardly even knows of her existence in real life. He thinks that Rei is after something he has and is very cautious towards her every move. All the while, she's doing her best just to socialize with him the bare minimum. It's a nice little cherry on top subplot that makes it a little more fun. Throw in the SLF Theater minis at the end of each episode and the killer intros to this series, and you've got one hell of a fun experience. All in all, it weighs in at a whopping 8 out of 10 on the Crimson scale. It's very fun and very entertaining, but far from the utter masterpiece of its time in a way that many other anime attempt to be. What it lacks in compelling story, it makes up for in raw entertainment power. It's wildly funny, very well conceived as a concept, and seems to be quite loved by its creators. The production is good, and I overall do recommend you give this series a shot if you haven't already. But that's about enough out of me, so if you liked this video, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons because those simple but free actions do really help me. And if you have any thoughts of your own, please leave them down in the comments. I'm grateful to you for giving me some of your time, and I hope to see you in the next one. Later.